Martial arts champion Jason Reed scoffed at the limping veteran volunteer, his voice carrying across the charity event hall. This is what happens when military training focuses on following orders instead of developing real combat skills, he announced his entourage, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. The veteran leaned on his cane, his expression unreadable as the famous fighter continued to critique. Uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the crowd of donors and military supporters. No one expected what would happen next when the quiet veteran slowly set his cane aside. Mike Thompson moved with measured precision through the ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel, occasionally leaning on his military-issue cane when his right leg troubled him. At 38, the former Special Forces operator carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing to prove. His simple dark suit was impeccably pressed, his only adornment a small pin of the Warriors' home charity where he'd volunteered since retiring from active duty 3 years ago. "Everything on schedule, Mike?" asked Colonel James Barton, the retired officer who'd founded the charity after his own 30-year military career. "Yes, sir," Mike responded, checking his watch. "Catering is set, auction items displayed, and donors are arriving. We're tracking for a record year." What guests couldn't see beneath Mike's composed exterior was a titanium rod supporting his right femur, shattered during his final deployment. The doctors had called it a miracle he could walk at all. What they didn't understand was that for men like Thompson, adapting and overcoming was simply part of the mission parameters. 2 other veterans approached, both former members of Mike's unit. They exchanged the subtle nods and brief handshakes of men who shared bonds beyond civilian understanding. "Ryan's bringing in Senator Williams through the side entrance," one mentioned. "Less media that way." Mike nodded, scanning the room with practiced efficiency. "Perfect. Remember, tonight isn't about us. It's about raising funds for the families." This was Mike Thompson, methodical, humble, focused on the mission rather than the spotlight. The Purple Heart and Silver Star medals he'd earned remained locked in a drawer at home. Tonight was about serving others, not celebrating himself. Jason Reed made his entrance like a champion entering the arena. His custom white GI with gold embroidery caught the light as he strode confidently through the main doors, flanked by 4 assistants in matching black tracksuits emblazoned with Reed Combat Systems in bold lettering. At 34, Reed was at the peak of his career. 5-time national martial arts champion, celebrity trainer to Hollywood stars, and social media sensation with over 3 million followers. His perfectly styled hair and camera-ready smile spoke of someone who understood his brand value down to the dollar. "Mr. Reed, over here." A photographer motioned, and Jason instantly shifted into his signature pose. Arms crossed, chin slightly raised, the look of a modern warrior king surveying his domain. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the event coordinator, "please welcome our special guest performer for tonight's Warriors Home Benefit, the undefeated national champion and martial arts innovator, Jason Reed." A smattering of applause followed as Jason waved magnanimously. He'd agreed to this charity appearance after his agent explained the publicity value. Supporting veterans was trending, and the photo opportunities would be excellent for his upcoming energy drink launch. "The room looks decent," Jason muttered to his assistant, Kevin. "Make sure they have the spotlight angles we discussed. My demonstration needs proper lighting to really translate on camera." Kevin nodded, making notes on his tablet. "Already handled. And we've got 3 influencers here to capture everything for social." Jason surveyed the room with the calculating gaze of someone assessing competitors rather than colleagues. When he spotted several decorated military officers, he smirked slightly. Time to show these military types what real combat training looks like. Jason was stretching backstage in a designated preparation area when he noticed Mike Thompson directing volunteers, occasionally leaning on his cane as he pointed out where additional chairs should be placed. "That's the guy running this thing?" Jason asked Kevin, nodding toward Mike. "Yeah, Mike Thompson, former military, handles operations for charity," Kevin replied, barely looking up from his tablet. Jason watched Mike's methodical movements, his martial artist's eye noting the stiffness in the veteran's gait. "Look at that form. No core engagement. Terrible weight distribution. That's military training for you. All about following orders, nothing about proper body mechanics." Mike happened to glance their way, offering a polite nod. Mr. Reed, thank you for supporting our event tonight. The demonstration slot is at 8:30, right after the initial funding announcement. Jason straightened, towering over the shorter veteran. Looking forward to showing everyone what real combat training can do. Something your guys could probably benefit from, based on what I'm seeing. His eyes flickered meaningfully to Mike's cane. Mike's expression remained neutral. Everyone has their specialties, Mr. Reed. That's diplomatic, Jason chuckled. But let's be honest. If modern military training incorporated more of my techniques, we'd have fewer injured veterans, wouldn't we? He gestured toward Mike's leg. No offense. None taken, Mike replied, his voice steady. Training and combat are different worlds. That's what people say when their training fails them, Jason countered, his voice carrying enough for nearby volunteers to hear. In my system, we prepare for any situation. No excuses, no failures. Mike simply nodded. I look forward to your demonstration, Mr. Reed. If you need anything, just ask any of our volunteers. As Mike walked away, Jason turned to Kevin. See that? Classic military mindset. Rigid, outdated, resistant to innovation. No wonder they come back broken. The ballroom lights dimmed as Jason took center stage, his white GI practically glowing under the spotlight. He moved through a series of impressive techniques, each kick and strike executed with championship precision. The audience watched attentively, some recording on their phones. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason announced after completing a particularly complex sequence, what you're seeing is the evolution of combat arts. While traditional military training remains stuck in outdated methods, modern martial arts has continued to advance. He scanned the room, spotting Mike standing near the back, organizing auction items with other volunteers. In fact, Jason continued, his voice taking on a theatrical quality, I'd like to invite a military representative up here. He pointed directly at Mike. Sir with the cane. Yes, you. Would you join me for a moment? I'd like to demonstrate how modern martial arts techniques could benefit even injured veterans. An uncomfortable murmur rippled through the crowd. Mike looked up, caught off guard. I appreciate the offer, Mike replied evenly, but I'm needed here with the auction preparations. Jason's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. Come on, folks, let's encourage him. This is for charity. After all, I promise to be gentle with our wounded warrior. Several military personnel in the audience shifted uncomfortably. A retired general near the front frowned deeply. I think the gentleman has declined, an older woman in formal attire called out. Seems our military friend is reluctant to try something new. Jason persisted, his tone dropping into mock concern. This is exactly the problem I'm highlighting. Resistance to improved methods. That mindset is why we have veterans who can barely walk properly. Colonel Barton stepped forward, his face flushed with anger, but Mike raised a hand slightly, signaling him to wait. The tension in the room was palpable as Jason continued his demonstration, occasionally glancing toward Mike with barely disguised contempt. After concluding his performance to polite applause, Jason stepped off the stage and made a beeline directly for Mike, who was speaking quietly with a donor near the auction tables. The martial artist's entourage followed, smartphones ready to capture whatever was about to happen. That was quite a demonstration, Mike said politely as Jason approached. Glad you enjoyed it from a distance, Jason replied loudly, positioning himself so others could hear. Since you couldn't join me on stage, I thought I'd bring the lesson to you. Without waiting for a response, Jason began demonstrating a basic stance. See, this is proper weight distribution. Your military stance, he mimicked an exaggerated, stiff posture, puts tremendous pressure on the joints. No wonder you guys come back with injuries. The nearby guests fell silent, watching the uncomfortable scene unfold. Mike remained expressionless, though several other veterans began moving closer, their body language tense. Here, try this, Jason insisted, demonstrating a martial arts movement. Even with your limitation, this would help you move more effectively. I appreciate your expertise, Mike replied calmly, but this isn't the appropriate time or place. Jason's expression hardened. This is exactly why military training needs modernization. The resistance to superior techniques is ingrained in your culture. He executed a lightning-fast sequence of movements that ended with his fist stopping inches from Mike's face. That would have been lights out in any real confrontation. Several nearby guests gasped. Colonel Barton started forward. But again, Mike subtly gestured for him to stand down. "You're remarkably resistant to improvement," Jason continued, raising his voice further. "Is it pride? Or just military stubbornness? Either way, it's a disservice to your men." A vein pulsed in Mike's temple, but his voice remained steady. "Mr. Reed, I understand you're passionate about your discipline, but you're making assumptions without all the information." "What information?" Jason scoffed, performing another quick strike that stopped just short of Mike's shoulder. "The information is right in front of everyone. Outdated training, physical limitations, and unwillingness to adapt." The room had grown unnaturally quiet, the charity event temporarily forgotten as guests watched the confrontation. Mike Thompson looked at Jason Reed for a long moment, then carefully set his cane against the auction table. "Perhaps you're right, Mr. Reed," Mike said, his voice calm but carrying the silent room. "A demonstration might be educational after all." Something in Mike's tone made Jason pause, but his confidence quickly returned. Finally, some willingness to learn. "Let's start with basic defensive posture." "Actually," Mike replied, "I'd be more interested in seeing your defensive capabilities. Would you mind demonstrating your best defensive stance against an opponent?" Jason's face lit up, eager to showcase his expertise. "Absolutely. My defense is championship caliber." He settled into a perfect competition stance, balanced and ready. "This position allows me to counter any attack from any angle." "Impressive," Mike nodded. Then something subtle changed. Mike's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. The slight hunch from his injury disappeared. His weight distribution altered, and suddenly he looked different. Jason noticed a change, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "What are you?" "You mentioned real confrontations earlier," Mike said, his voice dropping slightly. "In my experience, they rarely announce themselves with tournament formality." Before Jason could process the statement, Mike moved. It wasn't flashy or theatrical, just a simple, economic step forward that somehow eliminated the space between them. Jason instinctively threw a defensive block, but Mike wasn't attacking where expected. The veteran's movements were precise, controlled, and completely unlike anything Jason had encountered in competition. For the first time that evening, genuine alarm registered on Jason Reed's face. What happened next occurred so quickly that many guests barely followed the sequence. Mike's hand intercepted Jason's blocking arm with mechanical precision, redirecting it while simultaneously applying pressure to a specific point that caused a martial artist to instinctively shift his weight. In that millisecond of imbalance, Mike executed a simple sweeping motion that took Jason completely off his feet. The national champion landed hard. His custom GI rumpled as Mike controlled his descent with practiced ease. In one fluid continuation, Mike established a restrained position that left Jason immobilized but unhurt. The entire exchange had taken less than 3 seconds. "What the hell was that?" Jason gasped, genuinely shocked. "That's not any martial art I've studied." "It's not meant for competition," Mike replied quietly, releasing Jason and stepping back. "It's meant for survival." Colonel Barton stepped forward, his military bearing commanding attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed wasn't showing off. That was a small demonstration of close-quarters combat as taught to our Special Operations Forces." The colonel helped to stun Jason to his feet. "Mr. Reed, you've been interacting with Master Sergeant Michael Thompson, formerly of Delta Force, recipient of 2 Bronze Stars for Valor, and until his injury, the head hand-to-hand combat instructor for Special Operations Command." A ripple of murmur spread through the crowd as Jason stared at Mike with newfound recognition. 3 combat deployments, the colonel continued. 17 close-quarter engagements. The techniques Sergeant Thompson just demonstrated have been battle-tested in circumstances I'm not at liberty to describe in detail. Mike had already retrieved his cane, his demeanor returning to the modest volunteer coordinator. "My leg works fine most days," he explained simply. The cane is just for when the titanium rod gets temperamental after long hours. The ballroom erupted in astonished conversation. Jason Reed stood rooted in place, his previously immaculate appearance now disheveled, his celebrity composure shattered. His assistants hovered uncertainly, their smartphones no longer recording. I've trained with Olympic judokas and MMA champions. Jason finally managed, genuine bewilderment in his voice. Nothing felt like that. It was like you knew what I would do before I did. Combat techniques aren't designed to look impressive, Mike explained, no hint of boasting in his tone. They're designed to end threats immediately with minimal energy expenditure. Several veterans approached, exchanging respectful nods with Mike. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a prosthetic hand, addressed Jason directly. Different worlds, different needs, he said. What works in a tournament rarely works when someone's actually trying to kill you. The celebrity martial artist nodded slowly, humility replacing his earlier arrogance. Meanwhile, several guests who had witnessed the demonstration approached Mike, their interest in the charity clearly heightened. A reporter who had been covering the event turned her attention from Jason to Mike. Sergeant Thompson, would you mind explaining more about the Warriors' home mission? Our viewers will be very interested in your perspective. As Mike began speaking about the charity's work with injured veterans and their families, Jason's entourage quietly retreated to a corner. Kevin leaned toward his boss. Should we slip out the side door? This isn't exactly the publicity we expected. But Jason, still watching Mike, shook his head. No, he said quietly. I think I need to hear what he has to say. As the charity auction concluded with record-breaking donations, Mike Thompson stood to the side, leaning lightly on his cane. He had successfully redirected the attention back to the Warriors' home mission, deflecting personal questions with practiced humility. Jason Reed approached, alone this time, his earlier entourage conspicuously absent. I owe you an apology, Sergeant Thompson, he said, extending his hand. I made assumptions based on incomplete information. Poor tactical decision, as you might say. Mike shook his hand firmly. Accepted. We all have different training for different purposes. Would you consider, perhaps, consulting with my studio sometime? Not to teach competition techniques, but maybe to help us understand the difference between performance and practical application. Mike nodded thoughtfully. For the right purpose, I might, especially if it benefits Warriors' home. As the evening wound down, guests departed with newfound appreciation for the veterans among them. Many wondered, how often do we judge others based on surface appearances? How many remarkable individuals walk among us, their true capabilities hidden behind modest exteriors? What would you have done in Jason's position? Would you have recognized your mistake and apologized, or doubled down on your assumptions? Let us know in the comments below. If this story taught you something about respect and looking beyond appearances, please like and share it with someone who might need this reminder. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that reveal unexpected truths about the extraordinary people living ordinary lives among us.